Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica and today I want to talk about my all-time favorite books so far. So in this video, I've included my top 10 books that I've given all 5 stars to, and there's a little bit of everything for everybody. So there's a YA, there's a slow burn, there is a heart-wrenching story, there is an emotional one, there is a rom-com. So there's a little bit of everything in there. The way that I've organized these books is one is going to be my all-time favorite book and number 10 being my least favorite, although these are my favorite books. Number 10 means it's just my least favorite compared to the rest of the books. So this story follows Liz, who is in high school and she is a hopeless romantic. She loves everything rom-com. She loves swoon-worthy movies and she believes that her love story should also be a rom-com. So when she finds out that her childhood friend is coming back to town, she decides to recruit no other than her arch nemesis next door neighbor, Wes. Now, they grew up together too in this little friend group, but they've never gotten along and they've currently not getting along because there is a parking spot that each of them want that they currently fight for. She decides to recruit him to help her win her crush over, and if he does, then he's able to keep the parking spot forever. And Wes is all about it. He can't wait to claim this parking spot, so he's all in. And of course, we all know what happens there. It's their romance. It's such a cute story. I recommend this to anybody who just wants a cute high school romance, enemies to friends to lovers trope. Very, very fun. And the things that Wes does for her discreetly throughout the book are just so sweet. And again, the book does also have quotes in the beginning of every chapter from a famous rom-com movie, so that if you're a movie buff, that is like just a little sprinkle of magic in there for you so that you can enjoy the experience that much better. This book was so funny at times, and it also had a little bit of drama going in there. It wasn't just a fluffy romance, it was just enough fluff, but with some realistic aspects and some things that the characters were going through. So I do really recommend this book to everybody and anybody because it is a fun time and it gives all it's gonna give to you. I had such a great time reading this. I was never bored. It never seemed like it was too YA-ish, like too childish. And there were some serious aspects in there too. So I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy Liz and Wes's romance, and I really enjoy Lynn Painter's writing as well. Coming in at number 9, I did have to include an Emily Henry book. This one, out of all the ones that she has, is my all-time favorite one, and that is People We Meet on Vacation. I really enjoy this story. This is a friends to lovers trope, and it's just such a good story. It gives you all the summery vibes that you need, and their friendship is just, I mean, their friendship has some issues, but when they get together in this story, it's just amazing. So this story follows Poppy and Alex. They've been friends for years and years. They have nothing in common. They're totally opposites and they live in different states. She lives in New York and he lives in a small town. But every summer for a decade, they do take a 1-week vacation together. And then something happens that they don't talk for 2 years, and Poppy's living her life, Alex is living his. She's stuck in a rut. She's wondering when was the last time she's been happy, and it was when she was on vacation with her friend Alex. So she decides to reach out to him and ask him to take one more vacation, and there she hopes to lay it all on the line and kind of establish what is going on between them, if they can keep their friendship or if this is something more. And this book was so good, like the angst, the tension, the irritation that I got reading this book, because you know that they love each other, but they have yet to admit it and they're so stubborn. But then it's so worth it. It's so worth feeling like that because in the end, we all know what happens, and it was a really great story. I really enjoyed it. Even though there was a lot of miscommunication and a lot of unsaid words that I would have wished they would have just came out like adults and communicated about it. Overall, I really did enjoy their story, even though at times I got frustrated. This book was really good. It also gives really good summer vibes. Friends to lovers. There's a problem that happens between them. A lot of people say that they didn't really like, or they thought it was silly, the reason why they stopped talking for the amount of time that they did, but I didn't mind it. I mean, sometimes in life that is what happens. People don't really communicate like adults, and time goes by and lots of unsaid things. I didn't mind it at all. I still enjoyed the story, and it is my favorite Emily Henry book, so I do recommend this one. Coming in at number 8 is The Roughest Draft by Austin Siegmund-Broka and Emily Wibberley. And what's cute about this story is I think the authors are married, so it's super cute that they decided, or they have been writing books together. I'm not sure if this is a book that they decided to write together or if they have more, but I absolutely fell in love with this book. This is a book that got me into romances. To be honest with you, it was my second romance of the year last year, and I absolutely fell in love with romance books. A lot of people don't like this book though. There's mixed reviews on it. My experience with this book was a 5-star. I enjoyed every little aspect of it, and I really, really loved this story. This story follows Katrina and Nathan. They're both authors, and every time they write a book, they decide to rent this cute little cottage in Florida and basically live there for the amount of time that they're writing their next book. They have been a hit together as authors. They have written pretty successful books. And then something happens between them that they basically no longer like each other, and they separate and they don't work together anymore. So their editors are like, look, there's one more book I would like you guys to finish together, because when you guys write books apart, it's not as successful. That's basically what happens in this story. They reconnect and they go back to that Florida house that they rented, and they try to write a book together. But it's so fun because they don't like each other. It's almost like unsuccessful to have two authors who are bumpy heads and don't like each other to try to finish a romantic novel. So that was very interesting, and also it is so cute how there's a lot of unsaid feelings between them both, and you tend to get very frustrated, but this book gives you so much angst and so much yearning for them. Like, you really want them to get together, and it's so romantic too, because I love anything and any book that has to do with authors, editors, publishing houses, like anything that has to do with books or authors or writing. I'm all for it. This book delivered that and more. There are certain moments as they're writing each other's parts and they're proofreading each other's work, there are hidden messages in there that each other writes that basically you can tell relate to their feelings. I don't know if that made any sense, but basically they're writing their feelings on paper and exchanging them to each other as part of their rough draft for their newest novel together. And to me, that is so, so romantic. I love this story so much. It has summer vibes, it has beach read vibes, it has a lot of yearning and angst and tension. Forced proximity is one of my favorite tropes. I love when two characters are forced to live under the same roof for X amount of time, and how they navigate that and their feelings, and how there's unsaid things, but you can tell that they feel the same way about each other. This book was amazing. I highly recommend it. Next up is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. And of course, I had to include this in here if you haven't heard about this book already. This book follows Maise and Elliot. This is a childhood friends to lovers trope. They were best friends growing up. Her dad had a lake house. He lived right next door to her. They connected with their love for books and stories. Every time they got together, they would talk about a word that was on their mind. This book was so precious. There was a lot of drama in here, and some of it was really sad. Something happens between Elliot and Maise on the night that he confesses his love to her, and it totally breaks her heart. And on top of that, something else happens, and so it basically makes them not speak for a very, very long time, until one day she accidentally bumps into him, and this bubble that she has created to basically defend her feelings towards this person is now slowly disintegrating. If you haven't read this book already, you should. It's got everything you need in a romance and more. Next up is Marriage for One by Ella Maise. This book was everything to me. I love this book so much. I'm telling you right now, this is a slow burn, and it's a very, very thick book, but it's so worth it. The yearning, the angst, the tease that this book gives you because you know these two characters need to be together is just everything. So this book follows Jack and Rose, and Jack happens to be a lawyer in the firm that was hired by her uncle. When her uncle passed away, he left a will, and in that will, he specifically said that he has a property that Rose can take over if she is married. So here comes Jack out of nowhere. This handsome man, for some reason, decides to help her out with this, and they decide to have a fake marriage in order for her to be able to keep that property under his name and one day own it herself. It's very sweet that Jack out of nowhere decides that he wants to help her out with this. And for him, there's no strings attached. So it's their love story. The things that he does for her are just so great. He seems like a very stern, not super grumpy, but a very serious, stern man who doesn't want to BS, is very cut dry, and you get to see his personality come out, and you just absolutely love him for it. Of course, this is a fake marriage, so you have fake marriage, you have forced proximity, because in order for them to look like they are a happy married couple, they have to live together. And so they decide to live together not only because it's a fake marriage, but because her cousin is on to Rose. He doesn't believe they're actually married because he also did want the same property. And he's trying to prove the system that they're not really in love. So again, this follows their story. The explicit, steamy scenes that this book gives you are just immaculate. They are just perfect. This book made me feel all kinds of ways. Frustrated, happy, sad. I had all the feelings and more with this book, and I really enjoyed it. But I do have to say it is a slow burn and nothing really happens in the first 200 pages. But if you stick around a little longer and you just push through, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. It has no plot. It's just about them living their life, going to work, dealing with being in an environment together, living under one roof. But again, it didn't need to have a plot because it was just that good. Number 6 is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This book was so good. It was so funny, so steamy. There's an elevator scene in there that I was like, oh my gosh. It was adapted into a movie. I hated the movie. It cut out the best parts of the book. I don't know why in the film industry they have to do that. I don't know if it's like a copyright thing. I don't know. But I do know that the book is way better, like it always is. And everybody should read this book. This book was so fun. I flew through it, especially because before I read this book, during the time I did, I had just finished another book that I was not happy with. And this one, it was like a pick-me-up, and it was just so good. So this book follows Lucy Hutton and Joshua Templeton. Just the name Templeton, you know that he has a stick up his ass. Like seriously, he does. And they are enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers, work environment, they work together. They are both executive assistants to a publishing company, and these publishing companies decided to merge together in order to stay afloat. And they happen to work right across from each other next to their boss's office. They're passive aggressive to each other. Lucy's more of the happy, peppy, very colorful. She has like a colorful vibe going on. She likes to wear a lot of colors in her wardrobe, and she's very fun. And Joshua is very uptight. He owns 5 different dress shirts, dresses and suits, and he likes things to be neat and organized, whereas Lucy is more out there, quirky, and a little bit all over the place and messy, and that is why they're so perfect for each other. And the sexual tension that these two have is so dang good, so believable too. And there's banter. The banter in here is amazing. It's so fun. And again, there's an elevator scene in here that was just so freaking good. I recommend this book. This book was so fun. If you're trying to get into romance and you want to read something fun, but there's some steam in it, and there's tension, and there's banter, and they're enemies to lovers in the work field, The Hating Game is for you. Next up, I have The Roommate by Rosie Danan. This book is probably the first book that had so many explicit, steamy scenes in it, and I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all. This book was so dang good. So this book follows Clara, who is convinced by her best friend that she is absolutely in love with, to leave her job and move cross country and live with him for a little bit. So what does Clara do? She does that exactly. She leaves her job, everything behind. She moves cross country, only to get there and find out that her best friend, who happens to be in a band, has to leave and go on tour. So her best friend's like, I'm so sorry, I'm doing this last minute. I have to go do this tour, but you can stay here for the time being with my roommate. The funny thing is that Clara is a very goody good tissues. She wears button-up cardigans. She's one of those that had straight A's throughout her entire high school career and her college career. She's very put together and she likes things done a certain way. However, Josh is the exact opposite. And what's so funny about Josh is that not only is he the exact opposite of her, but he also happens to be a very well-known porn star. Yep, that's right, he's a porn star. So she's a goody good tissues and he's a porn star. And it's their romance. And it is so good. I ate it up. First of all, there's representation in here of the industry. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I appreciate it. And you know, because he's a porn star and she's a goody good tissue, there's a lot of things that Clara hasn't experienced herself, but Josh is willing to teach her. I had a fun time reading this, highly recommend. For number 3, I have Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I had to include a Penelope Douglas book in here, and just so you know, Penelope Douglas writes a lot of, I wouldn't want to say like darker romances, but more serious romances. Like this for sure is not a rom-com, and some of her romances have trigger warnings in there. Make sure to look up trigger warnings on all of her books. This one follows Jordan and Pike, and this one's actually an age gap of 13 years. And it is just such a good book. Man, I loved this book so much. This was my first Penelope Douglas book, and I'm glad this was my first one because I absolutely loved it so much. So Jordan has just been dumped by her boyfriend, who is a douchebag, and he's a very crappy person. Something happens where she had moved in with him and his dad, and he finds another girlfriend and moves out. Well, Jordan is still living there under the same roof as his father, Pike. Now, I know what you're gonna say. It is their romance, Jordan and Pike's romance, and Pike happens to be her ex-boyfriend's father. But this was done so well that I did not mind it at all. The age gap too was done so well. Again, I didn't mind it. He's 38, she's 19. It's their romance. It is immaculate. It is steamy. There's a lot of tension. It is forced proximity. They are living together. He's basically guiding her to be a responsible adult, young adult. And he's not a father figure, but he's a very grumpy man who wants nothing but the best for her. And you know that they're falling for each other, but it's forbidden because of the age gap, because it's my ex-boyfriend's father. They just don't want to give in, but you know they should. This was done very well. There's nothing icky about it. I did not cringe one time. I enjoyed it. Some people don't like age gap romances. I didn't mind it. I think it's very sexy, especially when the man is older, because, you know, he can teach her a few things. So I did really enjoy it. Super steamy. Lots of really great steamy scenes in here. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. Next up is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This is my favorite Colleen Hoover book, and I've read a few. And I had to include a Colleen Hoover book in here because she is the queen of romances. And not only romances, her romances have a lot of tragedy in them. They make you cry. They make you feel sad, mad, upset, angry. But overall, you love the characters. You love the story. Your heart breaks. My heart broke with this story. It was so sad and so emotional. I tabbed a lot of it, lots of beautiful quotes in here. This story follows Tate and Miles, and they meet under unique circumstances. They each share this mutual physical attraction that they have for each other, and they decide to be friends with benefits. However, that never works, right? That never works in a love story because feelings happened and somebody gets attached. I felt so much for Tate's character. It was so realistic. There's a lot of people that were bashing this story because of some of the decisions that the main character Tate makes, but they were realistic. Most of the things that happened in this book, as far as their romance goes and how messy it is and how ugly it is realistic in real life. And so I appreciate every bit of it. You get her point of view and his point of view as well. I just love books that offer that because it is fun to read about what they're thinking. This book is the queen of miscommunication, if I say so myself, but it was done so well and I highly recommend it. And my favorite book of all time is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This book opened up so many emotions for me. It is so beautiful. Archer is one of my favorite love interests in books of all time. He is just so amazing. He is such a great character, such a good person. You only want to root for these characters because they've both been through so much apart and they both go through so much together. So this story follows Bree and Archer, and Bree recently goes through something so traumatic with her father that she decides to leave her old life behind so that she doesn't remember that one night and move into a small town. In this small town lives Archer, and Archer doesn't communicate with anybody because he also went through some things in his past life as well. The thing with this book and what makes it so precious and so close to my heart is the fact that they both go through some trauma together when they meet each other. They both go through their heartaches together, and it's so beautiful. Not only that, but Archer is deaf and he has not communicated and does not communicate with anybody in town. He keeps to himself. He lives on his own. Nobody knows him. Nobody is friends with him. He is standoffish and he is this mysterious guy that nobody really knows. And Bree is the only person that knows sign language, and that's how they communicate together. And it's just so beautiful. This story is so beautiful. It made me cry. I will read this book again because I plan on annotating it. This book is so special to me. It has a place in my heart and will always have a place in my heart. You get both of their point of views, which is amazing. It just comes to show that even though he can't communicate verbally with her and she knows sign language, but when they first meet, he doesn't know that. Their first encounter together, the way that they looked at each other, the way that things happened, you felt it. You felt their love. I believed in their love. They go through so much together as a couple. They go through so much together apart. This book is beautiful. I loved this book so much. It is my favorite book of all time. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and comment below. Also, let me know, have you read any of these books? What you think about them? Are you thinking about getting any of these books? Comment down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll see you next time. Bye.